adventure of the Coronado Rotary Club. Starting off today, we will have Sue Ryan do the invitation and work.
Let us pray together, each one of us according to our individual beliefs. Let us offer thanks for our food and the fellowship we share. Lord, guide us as we reflect on the opportunities Rotary provides to serve those in need, near and far. Bless our efforts to help eradicate polio by ensuring that all children around the globe have access to life-saving vaccinations. Bless our End Polio Now leadership team as they finalize plans for Friday evening's wine tasting and auction. And bless the attendees who generously support this important cause year after year. Guide us in our service and allow us to be a source of hope for those in need. Keep us well so we can continue to serve. And bless those people around the world who are touched by our works. Amen.
Amen.
And the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we have some visiting Rotarians and some guests, and past President Dan Orr. How the Trojans do this?
Important thing is to cover. It's whether you win or lose, it's whether you cover or not. All right, so we've got one visiting Rotarian that found us in museums from the Club Kidrick. Actually, Club 33, Jim Kidrick.
Hey, yeah, hi, Jim. Hi, Jim. Welcome, Jim.
Okay, now, guests of Rotarians, starting on my left, your right.
I'd like everyone to meet my special guest, Joy Molinar. She's my neighbor and she has had a career in marketing and she's interested in joining our club. President Bob, fellow Rotarians, my dear little sister Margie Waldhouse is here. And she came down for the wine tasting, so welcome. President Bob, fellow Rotarians, I'd like to introduce my special guest, Sarah Palky.
Rotarian Paul Plum.
Now that I have the mic, President Bob, past President Dan, I'd like to introduce my special guest, former Navy SEAL, good friend of mine, Roger Clapp.
President Bob, and fellow Rotarians, I'd like to introduce my special guest, Kathy McDonald.
President, fellow Rotarians and guests, my special guest today is Jerry Moss. I think hopefully we'll be getting him in next week. And also we have a special guest, Kevin Kinney down here. Kevin, you want to say hi? I believe Alan Kinsel is sponsoring Kevin, and Kevin's wife Jackie is here today, I believe, for the first time.
President Bob, fellow Rotarians, it's my pleasure to introduce Amanda Manier, who we are going to bring in as a new member of the club today. I'd like to introduce JT Green.
Yay.
In the hinterland. All right, right on, beat the farm.
And I'd like to introduce my special guest, Amy Hoffman, who is a nuclear SWO, and we've been having her entertained because Brent Bennett can talk neutrons and protons. Oh, that's lovely to have it. All right, we have some red badgers here as well today. Let's see, we've got Julie. Oh, there you are. And Evelyn Markle. I saw Evelyn earlier, and then Brandon is here also. Did I miss any? Did anybody sneak? I got you, Brandon. All right, we've got Sarah. Okay, well, welcome. Do we have any others?
Suzanne.
Ah, all right. Suzanne as well. Late registration. Good to have you guys. Okay. And just for the record, yes, I know my haircut is short, but if you want to hear the whole story, see me afterwards. All right, let's go to announcements. All right, this is it, the big week. Our big event is coming up on Friday, and just a reminder that if you're on this committee, the committee photo is at 5:15 at the event, Jim Kaufman's house. So we'll do that 5:15. Beach cleanup immediately following that, so we can clean up the M Polio Now event and then clean up the beach afterwards. So good mode to be in. And if you enjoyed Flags on the Avenue here Monday, or not, you get another chance to do it here on September 11th. So 7 a.m. up, 6 p.m. down.
No.
6 a.m.
I'm sorry,
6 o'clock.
6:15 for going up. Ah,
Well, we're gonna
No,
be.
6 a.m.
Okay, real quick, where's Doug? He's here, but we're gonna go and unite with the fire station where they do their special service. Okay, the flag group is gonna be ready to go by 6:15. We're gonna go down to the fire station and be with them when they do their 9/11 ceremony, and then from there we'll continue the flags afterward. Okay, so for the flag people. Thank you, Bob.
okay. And then Rotary Social on the 14th. In case you saw last week's, there's a venue change. This will actually be at Robert Scott and Sandra Treadwell's home on Thursday. Appetizer, beverage, reusable glass, and we are collecting boxes of cereal this particular month for the food bank in IB. So if you would like to bring that, that's what we're collecting. Next slide. Speaking of which, I want to give a shout out to Ron Bernetti and Bob Syverson. They do this every month, and they go down, they got it down to a science, they say, 30 minutes, load the carts, and over to the food bank, and they have fun along the way. Thanks, you guys. Next slide. And there's a shot of our folks doing Flag on the Avenue. Wow, what a great group that is. Okay, now, just a couple of thoughts. Not everything we do is necessarily Rotary specific, but they're good deeds nonetheless. So we had what looks like a meeting quorum at the Sharp Hospice Summer Social here last month. But, you know, I really appreciate having this sent to me, but I can't see any Rotary pins on anybody here. It sure looks like a Rotary meeting to me. So, you know, I'm going to put you guys on the honor system here. I'm going to levy a fine to everyone in this picture. You know who you are. I'm going to put you on the honor system to send $25 to Helene for the benefit of the club endowment fund. Okay. And if you're not here at this meeting, tell your friend who's also in this picture. All right, next slide, please. Now, so the previous slide, they didn't wear their Rotary pins, which was bad. This slide, they didn't wear their Rotary pins, and that's good, because this is a really a good thing that they did. But of course, it's borderline political activity, which we don't do in Rotary. But it was good to see some Rotarians in disguise out there supporting this. It's a big issue for our environment, and it's the subject of some discussion that we're trying to undertake to figure out what we can do that is within the Rotary bounds of protecting the environment. Okay, with that, I think we'll move into an induction.
All right. President Bob, our board of directors, fellow Rotarians, and guests. The introduction to new member is indeed a great opportunity to welcome very special people into our club. This lady is, I'll tell you. So I would like to ask her sponsor at start to introduce her very briefly and give us her classification.
So fellow Rotarians, it's my pleasure to introduce you to Amanda Manier, our newest member. Amanda is a lawyer. She practiced in the city and now she lives on Coronado. More importantly than that, she's been very involved in doing charitable work in the Far East in terms of drilling water wells. So I'll give it back to Tom. Tom, you will then lead the induction, right?
Yes, sir. Thank you very much, Pat. That was very good. And thank you for the water wells and everything you've done. So Amanda, we welcome you to the best Rotary Club in the universe, which is linked to our global organization of volunteers dedicated to improving the world. Our club thanks you for your willingness to share the value of service and fellowship in Rotary. A new member means new ideas, new enthusiasm, and you got it, new fellowship, which leads to greater service. One of your major goals in the club is when you're asked to participate, you say, yes. And then you'll become a part of our amazing people of action. So, Amanda, one question. What was your primary motivation to join this best Rotary Club in the universe?
Thanks, Tom, and thank you guys so much for having me. My main motivation, I've lived in Coronado about 5 years, lived all over San Diego for about 20, and I've always wanted to get involved in the local community here in Coronado. I was busy with a crazy job that I worked 70, 80 hours a week up in Poway after 14 months ago. So now I'm free and here to help and serve. And I'm not only good at saying yes, but absolutely helping them. Thank you.
I love that. So I want to tell you, did you say what her classification was?
Yes, I left that for you.
Oh, great. So listen to this for all us old guys like me. She's a veterans disability law lawyer. So if you have problems with the VA, and I've already recruited her, I want Amanda on my team. So it is with great pleasure and on behalf of the board and the President Bob and all our members, we welcome you as the newest member. And would you present this pin to Amanda, please, sir? Yeah, it's magnetic. Just hold on. Don't come apart.
I do it now.
You don't know. You're not strong enough. No, I'm just kidding. So, fellow Rotarians, let's stand and welcome our latest student. All right. Amanda, thank you.
Thank you, past President Tom, and welcome, Amanda. Good to have you here. All right, we have a short announcement about LEAD. Karen.
Hello, President Bob, fellow Rotarians. I am our lead chairperson for the club. Lead, there's a little flyer on everyone's table. I did have a little typo. It does say 2022, but I know it's 2023. It is October 14th and 15th. What is LEAD? LEAD is a program for 8th graders. We choose a boy and a girl from Coronado Middle School, and they get to go to this amazing weekend. It's at Camp Cuyamaca. It's where these children learn how to lead themselves. So when they grow older, go into high school, get involved with Interact, on to RILA, where they learn to lead others. They're really learning to lead themselves. It's an amazing program. One thing we are looking for is facilitators. So Amanda, amazing thing to do. Any new Rotarian, you don't need to, you can, Ivan's gone, right, Ivan?
Right.
We did it. It's really fun. It's a weekend. We bus the kids from here to Cuyamaca. It's a quick overnight. It's an amazing experience. You do need to go through the youth protection background check before you can go. You camp with the kids. You come back the next day. I think we get more out of it sometimes than the kids do. They have amazing motivational speakers. All your meals are included. Once again, it's complimentary for any facilitators that go. So if anyone's interested, my information's on the bottom of the flyer, karen.strable@gmail.com. Reach out to me. I'm happy to give you more information on it. And if it's something that you would like to do, we'd love to have you join us. Thanks and have a great day.
Okay, and then to refresh, Friday is gonna be our big exciting End Polio Now wine tasting, and Sarah Sheberton has some things to say about that.
President Bob, fellow Rotarians and guests, can I have the, that'd be great. While he's doing that, it's finally here. The 15th annual Coronado Rotary End Polio Now is on its way. It's the best way to enjoy friends, festivities, wine, while providing service above self at the same time. Go to the next slide. So talking about service above self, what we'd like you to do is to start bidding now. We have both live auction items, silent auctions at the event, and then silent auction items on bidding out. And it's a broad array of fantastic things. I just put a sampling up here, but anywhere from Padres tickets to a yacht dinner, to wine tasting, to a 7-piece speed cruiser, an art museum, and Lamb's Player Theater tickets. And the list goes on and on, but we want you to participate. Go to the next slide, please. So what we want you to do is go after the silent auctions also on bidding out now. So go to Coronado Rotary Wine Tasting.charity. And Tim Quast and Christine Stokes have done a fantastic job of loading this all up. And Doug has done an amazing job writing all of the wording. You're a very talented person. Anyways, we want you to go ahead and do this. And then when you go there, you can see at the top, when you get to that site, there is a button to press on bid items now. You go to the next one and make sure that you register, because before you can go bidding, you have to go to this registry and put your name in. And then from there, you go back to the site and they have it beautifully categorized by things that will be interesting to you. And then you just go ahead and bid. You'll see what the previous bids are, and it goes from there. So please, please do this. This is service above self. Can you go to the next slide? So we just want to talk about, I know Kit talked about the raffle last time, but it has been updated. So updated that I didn't get the photo in here. But not only do we have the Silver Oak Magnum that Pat Stark, but also Sherry Richter. If you look at this tequila basket over here, it's amazing. So there's 2 things that you can win on that. And I know that Kit went through this before, but we've got a great deal for you. Not only you can get 1 ticket for 20, but you can get 10 for 50 and 25 for 100 chances. Only $4 an item. And we want you to go ahead and do that, because that will enable you to win these amazing items. And then you just see Jamie, she'll be out there and she's over here. When you go, make sure you put your name on the ticket once you buy it. Next slide. So we just really want to thank, first off, Chris Keys and Kit Williams for going above and beyond in service beyond self. They are dedicated, creative, organized, and probably the best bosses you could ever have. As well as Jim Kaufman for donating his beautiful property. And he's doing so much to get it ready for it. He is an amazing person. So could we have a round of applause for you? And also the rest of our committee is amazing. I just wanted to tell you that everybody is working so hard. But just so you know, for next year, it is the best committee to be on. We drink wine and have appetizers at every committee meeting.
Thank you, Sarah. Hey, real quick, how many of you have a computer? And how many don't? How many don't know how to use a computer? Or to go to a website for that matter. So I have to, I'm not that tech savvy, so I just a little short story. So I said, well, let's see. I know there's some website out there where all our stuff is. I sure can't remember what it is. Bidding Bird or something like that. Finally, I know it's Bidding Owl. Yeah. Okay. So I have 2 steps. Anybody, experts have shown even a monkey can remember things with 2 steps. So go to your browser and just type Bidding Owl into Google. You guys know Google, right? Okay. And it'll come up. It'll take you to the biddingowl.com, and then there's one of those little search things. It's a magnifying glass. Just type in Rotary, And the second, I'm serious, the second thing on there is our event. There's one in Cleveland doing something else, but you'll see ours because it's big and it's red. It says End Polio Now, wine tasting Coronado. And you're going, wow, I got there in 2 steps, okay? And then, just click on that and then you can go through the whole thing. And it's just, it's fun to see what's out there. This committee did so much work getting this put together, and it's, we're like world famous in the Rotary, realm for what we do with this event. So do take those 2 steps, even if you don't bid it on anything, go see what's on there. There's a lot of neat stuff, and it's kind of cool to see what the team did just to put all that together. Okay, speaking of polio and our new member, Julie Lowell, excuse me, is going to give us a Rotary minute or two, which includes polio.
Thank you, President Bob, fellow Rotarians and guests. In 1955, I was 4 months old when my mom came down with polio. She was in the hospital for about 30 days and spent most of that time in an iron lung. Luckily, she came out of it okay. Polio vaccinations were available at the time, but they weren't available to my mom or other adults. The initial rollout of the polio vaccines were properly aimed at the higher risk infants and kids, so they weren't available to the adults yet. The challenge to make polio vaccinations available to everyone who needs them continues today. For example, last year, Niger had cases of polio. Niger gets 90% of their cheap electricity from Nigeria. Because of the coup in Niger 30 days ago, Nigeria no longer provides any electricity to Niger. Without electricity, it cost over 20 times more to run generators to provide refrigeration for polio vaccines in Nigeria so they don't spoil. Despite ongoing challenges that we face and the changing challenges that we face regarding providing polio vaccinations, we must continue the fight to make polio vaccinations to everyone who needs them around the world, because that is how we can end polio now. I would add that I've taken a look at some of the amazing items that are up for auction, and I would encourage you all to take a look at some of the unique and wonderful items that are available. And if you're considering bidding on any of those items, I would ask, maybe consider bidding just a little bit more. It's a great cause. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. Okay, well, I'll tell you what, so I'm going to get around to introducing our guest speaker here in a moment, but as part of setting that up, and I'll get to his bio here in a minute, but one of the things deep in his bio is that he, like I, was a former A7 driver. So we put all the A7 guys over here at this table, and I noticed that past President Paul Plum decided to put all the special warfare guys over at that table. There's some space here in the middle, so when we break, I think we'll all go for it. All right. Well, I'll tell you that it's my real pleasure to introduce our guest speaker, a man I've known for a few decades here, who as I've watched him go through his post-Navy career, I've decided he's kind of the P.T. Barnum of adrenaline-driven motorsports on sea, air, and land. He has been the director of several air shows, air races, boat races, and Grand Prix throughout the Southwest here, from Fallon, Nevada, all the way into Southern California. And it has set himself. He's a great organizer, and he's a real motivator too, which is kind of the story behind, number one, how he got to be the CEO and president of the Air and Space Museum here in San Diego, which was kind of, prior to 2007, just a little kind of backwoods, county museum. And Jim Kidrick, got in there and turned it into a world-class, world-renowned, not just a museum, but a venue for some spectacular events, which has included their the rejuvenated Hall of Fame event, which has gotten, just historically huge, people from aviation, as inductees, most of them still living, by the way. And he is, what's is really special, I mean, to have folks that can sit on a stage and then have somebody like Jim Kidrick moderate a panel and hear the stories that some of these icons of history have to tell. And he's the one that put that all together and has brought this museum into such grand fashion over the past 16 years. He's an age-old friend of mine. He's a great American. He's an Eagle Scout. He's a retired naval aviator, and it's my pleasure to welcome Jim Kidrick, CEO of the Air and Space Museum. So I'm going to call him Rooter instead of President Bob, if that's okay.
So what's your call sign?
Oh, my God. See, okay, so typically, being in the Navy, if I got up here to brief a flight or whatever, someone would say, stand up, slug.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
No, I'm being honest. Okay, so slug was my call sign. I've had to, bear the burden of that for many, many years. I tell people I'm actually 6'4", but I walk short. So, slug stands for, because Tom will tell you, short, little, ugly guy. And, I kind of, I think got used to it, so it doesn't hurt so bad. I am a little hurt though, not by the invitation to come here, but we would have provided you, President Bob, an auction item of like a VIP tour of the Air and Space Museum for 10 people. Okay, so we'll do that. Including the base. Including the base. Yeah. So I just want you to know, I'm sensitized to that now, just a bit, President Bob. So, I'll share just a real quick story. About 3 years ago, I started something called The Trip, because I'm not really very creative. And it's an all-guy thing, okay? Rooter has been on Trip 2 and Trip 3. We were ride buddies on Trip 2. And then who'd you bring? Who was Grayson? And so it's one of those where we go a lot of very, very unique places. We have spent the night in California's oldest hotel. We have been in California's oldest bar. We have been up with the railroad in Carson City. So I would encourage anybody, I'd always wanted to do it. I would encourage you at our age to consider that, whether it's an all ladies trip or an all guy trip, but it's very worthwhile. And Rooter is just one of the great guys. I got a kick out of you saying you weren't a techie. Okay, okay, he's a techie. Okay, so anyway, thank you for letting me come and talk. I've got actually two presentations here, because to talk about the museum, you also have to talk a little bit about Balboa Park. You almost can't talk about the impact, which is more negative than positive, that has been made on the organizations that reside in the park over these past number of years. How many people have actually driven Park Boulevard in the last, okay, the bus lanes, and you know, it's very tragic. You see a lot of near accidents now, and it really has hurt access. They've taken away 144 parking spots in the Palisades directly in front of the Air and Space Museum, and 300 along Park Boulevard. So, you know, if people use the new word equity, okay, well, equity is access for us. And as we try to provide something very, very special, the experiences that we provide literally all ages, access is very, very important. Okay, so we're going to go ahead. We'll do the museum one first. I'm going to go through this very, very quickly. And I may stand over here just so I can kind of.
Yeah, take a seat.
Yeah, I could. That'd be good.
So you see
I don't
what
want
you're
to get in
talking
anybody's
about.
way. What's that? Okay, so we are kind of tomorrow's future today. I would tell you, you know, one of our missions certainly is to connect the dots of the past.
but also it's the vision, the future. We have to be something to what I call the next greatest generations, realizing that many of us in this room are the children of the greatest generation. I think we thrive and believe in what our parents provided for us, and I think that's one of the missions that we have to take on in our lives today. Metaphor, 120 years of powered flight. You know, if you look at the growth of technology, okay, and then you look at the growth of aviation and space, they almost mirror image each other. If you think of December 17, 1903, the first time the Wright brothers flew something for how long? 12 seconds and 120 feet. Just 120 years ago, and where we are today, and then you overlay that aviation and space growth or advancements in technology, and then you make that's almost a mirror image to technology worldwide. So it really defines the American experience. The advancements in technology have been certainly significant, but it's also part of who we are, our willingness to embrace and conquer risk. One of the things we look at in our kids is trying to teach them, okay, don't be risk averse. You're going to have to take some level of risk to achieve excellence in your life. And certainly we talk about STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. The thing that's really cool about aviation and space over those, especially the last 10 years, it also translates to real jobs. I mean, there are, if a young boy or girl wants to go into space, or they want to be a technician, they want to be a flight director, an FAA controller, whatever it is. Well, as a matter of fact, I equate having your A&P license, your airframe and power plant license, to being a registered nurse. You're always going to have a job the rest of your life. So that's what's kind of cool about what we're doing today. San Diego Air and Space Museum of the 20th century. We were a priceless collection, rich regional aviation. Certainly we were sitting there in a position to be much more than we were at the time. So I got there at really the end of 2005. My first day working was January 1, 2006. But we were kind of frozen in time. One of the elements that a museum oftentimes can provide, I apologize with my back to you over here, so can provide is nostalgia. Well, if a 10-year-old would come into the museum, there was no nostalgia. There really wasn't anything that they recognized. So we needed to make changes. We had an aging volunteer workforce, minimal engagement with the educational community. It just wasn't making sense. And this is something I tell our team to spell both ways, is that anything we do, if it doesn't make sense in both ways, then we need to look very closely at if we're going to take it on. And certainly the importance of being a brand, being the San Diego Air and Space Museum, what we are today to our region, but what we are also to the nation. So we incorporated a number of things. We became not the Aerospace Museum. We're now the San Diego Air and Space Museum. We didn't want to be just industry, realizing taking a kind of a Smithsonian West approach, entertainment rather than just that museum-y mentality. I have close friends who will remind me that whenever they hear the word museum, they hear a little dusty, a little quiet, a little placid. We have noise, we have stuff, and we like that. So we like little kids running around. Establishing certainly a quality budget was very important. We now have about 85 employees, about 45 are full-time, the remainder are part-time, and 200 plus volunteers who are just the soul of the museum. So if you ever want to come down, you want to spend some volunteer time, I'll tell you, the Air and Space Museum is a great place. They're just great people. When I first got to the museum, I tell people it took about 2.5 to 3 years before the volunteers accepted me. Who's this kid? And this kid came in, at about 55 years old. But, to them, I was a kid. Certainly priority one, youth inspiration and education, but realizing that that we can provide that same thing to all age groups. I'm going to try to go through this very fast to get to the Balboa Parkway. So San Diego Air and Space Technology Center, we own a wind tunnel. So I'm technically president of the wind tunnel down on Pacific Highway that was built by Consolidated Aircraft, right, Brent? Okay, and they started building it in 44, finished it in 47. It is a world-class wind tunnel. We operate it, like I said, as such. Every Boeing jetliner from the 707 to the 787 is tested in that tunnel. So it's very, very exciting that we can keep it going, keep it up. This is Reuben Fleet. Yes, we have the Reuben H. Fleet Science Center, but Reuben H. Fleet was an aerospace guy. He employed over 45,000 people right here in San Diego at one time. Best business practices versus just that museum mentality. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. Priority one, our youth certainly, and what's our brand. Partnerships, we wanted to certainly expand ourselves. Most of these names you would have heard of, from Troy's to High Tech High School in the Park, which we're an active member of, supported by the Price Charities. So we have kids with us in the museum during the entire school year. And that's pretty darn exciting that we can contribute in that way, at those ages, mostly 4th, 5th, and 6th graders. Underserved youth, certainly expand our scholarship opportunities. We've now given over $1 million in scholarships over the past 25 years at the museum. Joint museum and school collaborations, which we always encourage. Interactive programs, we were able to bring in some high fidelity simulators. I've always felt that when you come into an aerospace museum, one of the things you should get the opportunity, if we can, is to simulate flight for yourself. And so we've got world-class simulators on board, and it just makes it more and more fun. Certainly video tours. We actually have a little device that we can tow around, and we can give a video tour to a school in Seattle, Washington. Reestablish our relevance. This is Bob Crandall, Chairman Emeritus of American Airlines, and who we brought into the museum. And he was a keynote speaker at one of our events, but he's actually in our Hall of Fame, which is October 21st of this year. I would encourage you to take a close look at it. The Hall of Fame event we do is the best in the country, maybe the best in the world. Matter of fact, we're going to have, I call him Bill Shatner. William Shatner is going to be there this year for what he's done, certainly inspiring us in the space venue, and of course, being our oldest man into space. He's now 92 years old, and but he's agreed to actually an interview on stage. We're going to be also doing General Atomics ASI, the unmanned side of the house this year, and we've got Jessica Meir, who is most likely going to be the first woman to walk on the moon. So we're very, very excited about her, and we've got some others. This is a slide that I've always thrown in. It's kind of an older slide, but it talks about the engineering status, of us compared to some of the other nations, and how focused they are on those STEM disciplines. And we're not ahead. No. So our flight plan for the future: lead those next greatest generations into that STEM world. Crusade for non-traditional education excellence. More and more, young people are getting their education from different sources. They're not just automatically going to college anymore. So how can we contribute to that in a very, very positive way? Develop hands-on interactive learning experiences. And of course, everybody here that's a pilot. How many people are pilots? Raise their hand. Okay, we all know there are shortages. If you've got a young man or woman, who qualifies to fly in the airlines, they will hire them yesterday. It's that severe. And so it's going to be that way for the next 20 to 30 years. And that's pretty exciting, really. So if you go to Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University, the Prescott campus, I'm on an advisory board, they're the chancellor, they just can't pump them out fast enough. And of course, they have because it's a trickle down or trickle up effect, is the airlines are hiring from the regionals, the national from the regionals are robbing flight instructors from Embry-Riddle and all the other aeronautical universities in the country. Collaborate with industry, certainly, which is a big one for us. Fortunately, we do have a lot of aerospace and aviation right here, in the San Diego region, and that's always exciting for us. But if you notice, they don't build a lot of airplanes in California anymore. And that's very unfortunate to not have that the same production that we used to have a number of years ago. What we need as an organization, you've heard it with all nonprofits, 501c3s, time, talent, treasure, which is something we encourage, all of those that are loyal to what we're doing at the Aerospace Museum And if you haven't been there, I told President Bob, I like President Bob, that's pretty good handle. I told Reuter, I said, come down and do a lunch at the Air and Space Museum sometime. We'll be glad to give everyone a tour, kind of an update on what we're doing there and show you firsthand, what it's about. But we also have a satellite site, by the way, out of Gillespie Field for anybody that heads out East County. And we've got another 30+ airplanes out there. So we have the Tomcat that was in the second Top Gun movie. It's out there, and we're actually going to put it on a pole. We're going to replace the Sea Dart here in the next year. Some of the experiences that we brought, Da Vinci, we have one called Above and Beyond in the museum right now is our special exhibition, which is terribly interactive and just a lot of fun. We had an exhibit called Science of Aliens. We brought in Star Trek. We had a 54% increase in attendance when we brought in Star Trek, but because we had an older board, I also had 5 board members quit because they didn't think it was the right direction for us. And it was very unfortunate, but it was some of that transition that was very challenging at first. I tell this story sometimes. My first board meeting that I attended was in December of 2005, and I actually hadn't started working there yet. And of course, I've been hired, but I really don't know the majority of the people in the room. And I'm sitting next to you. Do you ever know Ben Cloud? Yeah, Ben Cloud, former naval aviator, great guy. He was on the board. He's seated next to me. I don't know him, and I'm listening to them talk about the Hall of Fame that was going to be April 22nd of 2006. And they're going through and they're talking about it, how they've decided to not do an invocation. Who did the invocation today? Yeah, it was great, by the way. Okay, but they decided because they thought it wasn't politically correct. And you said the right term, whatever you should pray to, And so I'm listening to this, and of course I didn't realize that people were making a political issue of an invocation. And so then the next thing they were talking about the 3 people they were going to be inducting into the Hall of Fame, which were all no longer living. Now, Reuter brought up the point that I'll emphasize here in just a second. And so very candidly, I didn't even know the 3 names. So, I've been around aviation a little bit. And so I raised my hand. Now, Reuter will tell you that, and Tom might even tell you that occasionally I raise my hand when I shouldn't. Okay. My dad used to tell me that. He said, you don't always have to volunteer for that. And so, the person who was making these comments, I said, well, I have a fair amount of, event production. I've done Bay Fair and air shows and, balloon festivals and all this kind of stuff. And I said, I've never known anybody to make a decision to go or not go to an event based on whether or not they thought there was going to be an invocation or not. That really wasn't the criteria for going. And then I said, really, the primary point is that your marketing challenge for your next Hall of Fame is going to be that you're inducting 3 dead people that nobody knows. And of course, there was just silence in the room. Now, I hadn't even started working, Tom. I mean, this is, so I didn't know if I was going to be shown the door or whatever. But Ben Cloud, the reason I remember this is Ben kind of gives me a little elbow on the side and leans over. He says, well said. So I just, so I'm going to have a job. Anyway, so we have Amelia. If you remember the movie Amelia, we have the Lockheed Vega that was in the movie. We have our Hall of Fame food service investment, our store. When I got there, we did not have a liquor license. Okay, we were contracted with somebody who was giving us 30% of the net. Okay, which was like, who knew what the net was? And so we have our own liquor license. We now control our store. So there were just some, what you in this room would consider to be good business practices that we simply needed to incorporate for the museum itself. Doing Da Vinci, Discover Horton Flying Wing. This was a Northrop Grumman one. Okay, I got a call from a guy who just passed away, Rick Ludwig, also on Wigs, and very sad. I had to give his eulogy, and that was not good. But he says, Slug, I've heard about this thing, but I don't know much about it. So he's trying to describe this and he really didn't know much about it. And I just said, we'll take it, okay? Once again, like raising your hand. And so, the Horton 229, okay, is the first flying wing that was ever built. It was built in the early 40s by the Germans. They actually flew it a number of times. They crashed it. The pilot was killed. They were building the next one when the war ended. So this was a joint project between National Geographic and Northrop Grumman at the time to put one together and shoot the early first generation English radar at it to see how its RCS, the radar cross section, would do against the radar. And so it's a tailless airplane, which is a really, really big deal. And the Horton brothers, of course, were model makers. And if you know much about Germany, that's a lot of their history making very high quality bombs. So, you know, they put wood in the glue. They were trying to simulate all the things that had been done because nobody knew about stealth. Okay, they didn't realize that it was really awkward edges and, you know, it was not sending the radar signal directly back. So we have the only Horton 229 in the world in the Air and Space Museum, as we have actually the only GPS satellite, a number of things that are very special. 340 Theater, these are all things we added. That was Walt Zabel. You think of Cubic Corporation. You know, I remember going to visit Walt. How many people knew Walt Zabel? Okay, what a great guy. And so I visited him and we give him a big presentation and all that kind of stuff. And he called me a couple of days later and he said, you know, Jim, before you got here, I was pretty much sure I was going to write you out a check for $50,000. Now, I quoted 418 because I will never quote 300,000, 250. So I will always have some rough number. That's just, you know, from a guy who goes after sponsorships all the time. So he said, I was going to give you 50. He said, but do you think you could do it for 300? And I said, Walt, we'll get it done. And just a solid guy. So that's the kind of relationship certainly I think we have with the community. We continue to grow that. Animatronics, I'm an animatronic fan. I think that they add a little bit of life when you walk up, they start talking to you and they move. So we actually have the first one, we have I call him Charles Lindbergh, which as you enter the museum, we'll go up, then we have Amelia Earhart, and we have General retired Benjamin Davis, okay, which is one of the early Tuskegee Airmen that we're going to be putting up here in the beginning of October. Our goal is 5 of those around the museum, but it's those kinds of projects that add to the experience. So back in 2007, 2008, when the economy was a little bit challenging, I told our team 3 things. You know, sometimes in life you just got to work a little harder, and they did. Be at the top of your game and be good street fighters. Now, I have a story with street fighters that I meant, you know, connected to your community. And every year when I present the budget to our board, I provide them a mini business plan, you know, kind of a quick look at the next 12 months. And so I did that, and I had a board member who said he took offense to the term street fighter. Okay, he said, well, that's a thug and, you know, all that kind of stuff. And certainly I said, well, that's certainly not what I intended. And I just meant that, you know, we're going to be out there amongst them and we'll be at the top of our game. So it was one of our board members who used to work for SAIC, a guy named Tracy Trent. Tracy raises his hand and he immediately says, you know, when I was at SAIC, we all considered ourselves to be street fighters, and we were damn proud of it. Again, silence in the room, and I actually never saw that board member again because our chairman took him to lunch and said, this might not be a good fit for you if you're going to. So that's the kind of board that we have. They don't micromanage what we do, and we have a great team, and I love every one of them. So COVID, what was our goal? We laid off nobody. Okay, that was that meant everything to us. That and there were not a lot of organizations that even went after that. Some just got rid of people. But if we figured that if our people aren't the most important asset we have, you know, how are we going to expect them to, you know, perform for us in the future? And our diversity is through excellence. We believe the #1 goal is excellence. Diversity is an outcome. And it's a pleasant outcome. We have as diverse an organization as you'll ever see at the museum. Okay, so we're gonna go Balboa Park. I'm gonna go through this one really, really quick, and I apologize for that. And by the way, anybody wants to ask a question, there's people on Zoom you can ask.
Dr. Dina.
Okay, Balboa Park, the way forward. Okay, so this is just some of the slides we're gonna talk about, perception versus reality, park activation, and how people, just define things. Okay, here's the current perception of Balboa Park. It's beautiful, it's symbolic, it's San Diego's jewel, which we hear that all the time. It certainly is a significant community, regional resource. It is one of the regional parks. That's important to understand that there are two real key regional parks, Mission Bay Park and Balboa Park. Then we have community park, neighborhood parks, we have all that kind of stuff. Unfortunately, Balboa Park gets run by the culture that is, that defines some neighborhood parks. That meaning that, if you look at those people that live within a mile or 2 miles or 3 miles, they think it's their park. Yet this is a park that really caters mostly to people who actually are coming from out of town. On any given day, 60 to 80% of the people on the floor of the museum don't live in San Diego County. And that is really important for us to know and be aware of. So Cultural Sciences, Art Center of Excellence, we are kind of the Smithsonian of the West because we're clustered together closely. We had two primary expositions, of course, 1915 and the 35-36 exposition, which built our building. So we are in the Ford building. It's in the shape of gears. It's actually a very, very interesting building. Complex challenge, perceived stakeholders galore. I always tell people it's hard to define yourself as a stakeholder if you don't have skin in the game. And every day I remind our team, we have skin in the game. What happens to that park affects us. So Balboa Park, the reality. It really has a kind of an old tired appearance. It needs to be spruced up an awful lot. It needs that kind of investment. When we did a Ripley's exhibit a number of years ago, a guy named Jim Pattison, who headed up the Ripley organization, visited me and he said, Jim, he says, this park is a little bit colorless. And, he said, until I get down to, some of the bannering that you guys have done, trying to highlight the building, it's very unfortunate, but things move slowly. You'll hear estimates of $250 million to $500 million in deferred maintenance in Balboa Park. And of course, none of the ladies in this room would I let you use the restrooms in the park. They're unless you had a hazmat suit on. And certainly kind of a homeless refuge, access parking deficit. We talked about that. Mission, purpose, conflicts, too many stakeholders. Once again, I'll always talk about skin in the game. Plaza de Panama. How many people have heard the term Plaza de Panama and what was happening in Balboa Park? It is a tragedy that Plaza de Panama did not happen. I was on the committee, which was chaired by Irwin Jacobs. I was the chair of the subcommittee on fundraising. How they were treated when, if you remember the story, Irwin was invited by Jerry Sanders, mayor at the time, to come down, take a look at the park and say, hey, Irwin, can you lead some positive changes to our park that could be very exciting and lead us into the future, because there were going to be other phases that we were going to look at. Precise master plan, the master plan came along in 1989, precise plan 91, 92. They no longer are visions of the future. They're really a set of handcuffs that are keeping us from doing some really great things. And typically of master plans and precise plans and to some degree strategic plans, everybody gets together, they get the community because they want total transparency, and they build something that no one can fund. And then what do? They hand it to the city and they say, here it is, we're done. Well, the nice thing about for people who are doing all that planning and not having to fund it is that they just, it becomes what I call platinum plus diamonds plus. And so the cost can it's never going to be affordable until you get active involvement by the funders. And that was the advantage of Plaza de Panama, is that Irwin was leading the funding effort. The park is not activated. You'll hear that all the time. I would tell you the park is activated. We do 85 to 90 special events a year in the museum. There are many, many people that have gone to their high school prom at the museum, and the stories are, you know, absolutely tremendous about the experiences we can provide. We have the capability of doing max out a plated dinner for about 700. We could do an event for 1,500, 2,000 using the entire floor and food stations and things like that. So it's really an exciting venue. We have a wonderful special events department. And when I first came out of the museum, I actually was interviewed by some of our department heads. And when they found out that I was an event person, you can imagine the special event department went, oh, well, you know, maybe we should consider this guy. So it's worked out, but I'm the lucky guy for who they are. Public spaces, regional park system. The key is to remember that not all parks are alike. We talked about that regional park. You can't be driven, okay, by neighborhood park idiosyncrasies. You've got to ensure that we keep that regional park focus and what we are to literally millions and millions of people. And parks have a capacity, and that's one of the biggest challenges we have now. They've been removing parking when I could make a strong argument that we need 5,000 more parking spots. But as you know, the mobility teams that exist within our communities are trying to put you in a bus, which I, Ritter, you ride a bus all the time, don't you? By the way, that is a really short haircut. Sign up for the Marines and we didn't know about it. I had to say that because we can joke that way. So, so I took some of this wording right out of their website because I just said, okay, well, we'll define it the way they define it. And unfortunately, they don't run things the way they define it in print. But I understand a lot more now that I've been there 18 years. I'm trying to go through this quick. Moratorium. Most people don't understand that in the regional parks, there is a moratorium. So you can't do a special event, okay, between Memorial Day and Labor Day weekend. Now, what happens is that when the city keeps hiring people, there's no corporate memory. So all of a sudden you'll see somebody proposing some big event, okay, during the prime summer months. And you go, well, you can't do that. Well, why can't we do it? Well, because there's a moratorium. And that moratorium is actually very important. I could make an argument that there should be more moratoriums on events in the park, because when they do the event, those people, you know, I'll get a letter. Hey, we're going to bring 25,000 runners or 10,000 runners to the park, and they're all going to go to the museum after they get done running. Well, they're lying to you. And, you know, they're going to get a glass of water and they're going to head out to, you know, somewhere else and have breakfast. So it's unfortunate, but it's the realization that right in that cultural science and arts district, if you will, okay, that if we don't have the city and the community protecting us, no one can get to us. Park ownership. Okay, we talk about stakeholders. I'll just say it's a slate from the city of San Diego to the Park and Rec Department, Planning Department, the District Council, you know, Balboa Park Committee, Balboa Park Cultural Partnership, the Committee of 100, the Conservancy, now Friends of Balboa Park, which is now Forever Balboa Park, Save Our Heritage Organization, Citizens in the Zoo. So it just goes on and on and on, you know, with who you're competing with. And it's the realization that if you don't have skin in the game, you really don't have the right to stand up and say, this is the way the park needs to operate. Now, that doesn't mean you can't have an opinion, okay, and good ideas, but when those things are negatively impacting the organizations that are there 7 days a week and trying just to make a living, you know, and provide something very special to our community, it can be like handcuffs on us. Solution, you know, we have about 3,500 employees. This is not counting the zoo, about 7,000 volunteers. So if we don't ensure that those museums and cultural science and art centers of excellence aren't taken care of, they literally can go out of business. How many people remember the Hall of Champions? Well, it's not there anymore. And there are reasons. I actually, Reuter would expect this and Tom would, I actually interviewed 100% of their employees before they closed and gave them a presentation on how to run them, but they had already made the decision to go away, and now we have Comic-Con there, so. Visioning with the master plans and precise plans, I talked about that, they're simply outdated. And they've got to, we've got to do a lot of work to ensure they're up. You're watching the watch, aren't you, Mike?
Yeah.
Just about done. How you going? We're good. We're finishing. What it takes, extra strong leadership. It needs a common vision, certainly. It also, because Mission Bay Park, okay, remember I did boat racing. Okay, so most people don't know that Mission Bay Park in Fiesta Bay is the fastest unlimited hydroplane racing course in the world today. It's been that way for a long time. Because when they built Mission Bay Park, they built it like a multi-purpose gymnasium. They had planned, purposeful purposes. How many people have been Sail Bay, for example? Okay, remember you can't use a motorized watercraft in there, you know, during certain hours of the day. So the curvature on Ski Beach, curvature on Fiesta Island was to accommodate a 2.5 mile oval unlimited hydroplane course. And because they literally allowed, and fortunately they put it in the city municipal code that allows for up to 10 days of unmuffled powerboat racing and 4 additional days for unlimited hydroplanes alone. That's why we have been able to do that event for many years. Am I done? Common sense, the real challenge, and I'll stress common sense. Unfortunately, politics gets involved with everything we do around our community, and we just kind of say, well, you know, just if there was some common sense applied, it would be better. There you go.
Well, thanks for that quick wrap up, Slug. There's so much to talk about Balboa Park and at that museum, and thank you for coming and sharing it with us. I'm gonna ring the bell, and if you have any questions for Jim, I'm sure he'll stick around to have a few after that. Next week, we are at the Coronado Cays Yacht Club, and the guest speaker will be Pamela Harper, who is a nurse and is going to speak on some of the recent changes in California law regarding death with dignity. Don't miss that. All right, with that, go out and have a fantastic Rotary week, service above self, and I'll see you Friday at the Emporio Now.